tere kõigile,
Thank
kes
you.
on siis nüüd siinpool
Hello to
saalis ja
everybody.
siis ma saan aru, et teisel pool kuskil ekraanide taga
I understand
ka
some of you are here in the audience and some of you are at screens watching the streaming. I'm specialized on domestic violence, but actually a large part of my work is focused on just ordinary Estonian families with their ordinary problems. So I see myself as a relationship therapist. My bigger motivation and goal in my work is to help to improve the quality of relationships for Estonian families, women, men and children. But I'll get into the topic now, to the point, because we don't have that much time. I'd like to ask you a question. Please put your hand up if you think that you should leave a violent relationship.
Okay.
But if you have children, should you leave a violent relationship? I agree with you, and I saw that most of the people think that you should leave. I feel the same.
Minu küsimus on see, et miks vägivaldsest suhtest on
I
nii
have a
raske
question.
lahkuda.
The question is, why is it so hard to leave a violent relationship? I've written a book separating wisely. I look at violence as well, but it's not my main focus. But I know that if you have a violent relationship and children, then it's very difficult to leave this relationship. And if a victim comes to me and start to share her story, then I can more or less predict what is going to happen. And threats and attacks will come once the woman verbalizes her wish to leave. Often women don't leave the relationship because they're threatened that their children will be taken away by the partner. And often the partner lies about ex-partner, manipulates with emotion, and so on. So the threats are big. Once the person leaves with children, then the ex-partner starts to look for allies, turns to their child protection, for example, says that his parental rights are violated and so on. I don't want to discriminate gender basis, but statistics show that a lot of the violent people, abusers, are men, and then often I refer to them as mother and father, because I've seen few cases where the woman has been the abuser. It's usually the man. Then this poor man goes to the child protection agency, tells his story, and then the strong Estonian man, who usually doesn't show emotions, often starts to cry. He manipulates in order to make himself more powerful or more convincing. And often he doesn't tell the reason of breakup, belittles his own part. Then he sabotages the agreements, cooperation, exploits the child protection. He usually doesn't want to keep and respect the agreements that he has made with the ex-partner, and very often these cases get to the court. And the man often tells the woman that I'll sue you and I'll drag you through all these court instances. And this can be possible indeed. You can continue bullying and torturing bullying the woman. And then often these couples end up in family mediation. Often this mediation fails there because actually the man wants to keep bullying the woman, sabotages everything, and he he isn't really willing to work for an agreement. And even if they form some agreements, he often doesn't stick to them, doesn't respect them. There are different studies that say that violent men threaten with child protection and by suing, and the court system can become their new symbolic battleground where they want to keep battling. And sometimes battle there for years. And it's not that the man wants to be a perfect father, but he just wants to pay back, retaliate, wants to continue harassing and so on. Now, the cases that I'll, telling about these are just like illustrations, but I want to give out as few details as possible to just protect my clients. And then there's a story where the man knew that the child wasn't a biological child. Once the child was born, he didn't get good bonding with the child because he was abroad a lot. But now he's going to court to get custody rights over this child. And the main aim is just to pay back to the woman because the woman decided to separate. Now, parenting becomes very manipulative. It's like a theater there. My task is to be a bit like a detective. What are the manipulations used by the abusive partner? Often child protection agencies come to me to get assessment. What is going on there? And it's difficult for the child protection specialist to give an assessment because he's given a perfect show of a perfect parent. It's often that the abuser is like a wonderful parent after the breakup. When he meets the child, then he posts a lot of pictures about all the things they do together. Actually, it's that earlier he never did anything with the child. He never went to different events, the kindergarten, and so on. But now his aim is that he doesn't want to pay maintenance. He instead wants to get custody. He wants to undermine the authority of the other parent, wants to pay back. He wants to continue controlling and intimidating. It's often that the partner is put under pressure and she's threatened to leave and just give all the property to the abuser. Please, don't do it, of course, because after that you will be homeless without any property, and you won't have any place even where to stay with the children. But the abuser often puts this kind of pressure on the ex-partner to leave everything, to give everything to him. I'll perhaps leave this slide and go fast forward. I'll give this example soon. In Estonia, there's a widespread myth of a good father. Oh, he hasn't hurt the children. He hasn't put a hand on them. But it's often that there's no physical violence, but mental, psychological terror, and children also suffer from it. But it's very hard to prove this mental abuse. But and at the same time, it has a very big impact on the children. And what kind of effect does this have on children? The father uses the children as his emotional crutch. He says that it's so hard for him. He wanted an ideal family, but the mother ruined it all. He keeps telling about his worries. He often cries in front of children, sighs, manipulates with trying to make the child more compassionate towards him. And he often believes that he's now lost basically he doesn't see a point in his life anymore. He and then the child gets anxious. But some fathers also say that they are gonna kill themselves.
Minu praktikast mul on väga palju julmi näiteid, aga see minu jaoks kõlas ikkagi väga julmalt.
I have an example which was a severe case. There was abundant mental violence in this family. There was no physical violence. And then the adolescent daughter started to tell the mother that let's leave, it's really difficult for us to live here. Then it took the mother quite a lot of time, but then finally they left. And this was followed by mental terror from the father for a long time, stalking. Then quite fast they decided to have kind of custody where the daughter spent half the time at the mother's and half of the time at the father's place. And then after a month of this custody system, the girl said, after coming back from the father, that I'll set our house on fire and I'll hang myself. Daughter was put in a very difficult situation. I've seen lots of things done to children, but the children are almost always very loyal to their parents and wish them well.
Ja sealt ta enam ei naasnud.
The daughter packed her bag and lost complete connection with her mother, left the mother's house. And now it's gone so far. Well, the crisis happened 2 years ago. And if the daughter met her mother just in the street, then she would just turn around and not even say hello. And she has told her mother through Messenger that if you come back home to the father's place, then I'll continue communicating with you. So this girl has been really brainwashed, and she's living under the roof of a violent person, and this manipulation continues. And manipulation with compassion, another example. A father lied to children and told them that he has such a serious disease that if he gets frightened, then he could die right away. It was a difficult case. I met the children and I asked the children, while the father was there, asked them that what kind of illness is it? I asked the father, sorry. I don't want to say exactly what he said, just to keep it confidential, but it was really no disease that would bring about sudden death. And I told the children that this father cannot die suddenly. There's no danger of that. But the father was comfortable with the children being afraid of losing him suddenly. The children came to live with him. Now he didn't have to pay any alimonies. The mother instead had to start to pay alimonies. And then secondly, he was also getting benefits, and thirdly, getting to pay back to the mother. And he also had a new wife. And he started to invent different lies about the mother, that the mother is dangerous, she could kidnap you. But actually, it had been the mother who had been raising the kids until this far. She had been the one with real relationship with them. But this shows how big an effect this brainwashing can have. These children often make these unhealthy unions with their father. It's often that there are no rules at the father's house, so they can stay up as long as possible, as long as they want, can have gadgets for as long as they want, can have as many sweets as they want, and they can stay up for as long as they can. And screens are another big challenge of parenting. Then diet, nutrition, these are the big challenges with parenting. But often fathers don't have any limits, don't set any limits or rules for the children. It's often that the children get a lot of presents, a lot of things, and well, all the children would want these things if afford. I met an adolescent girl. We were speaking about all the presents she's getting from father, and she told me that, oh, yes, of course, I want to go to father's. I'm getting all the presents, and I asked her that. So has can you be bought? And she said, well, yes. That indeed, I like these things. It's often that when the children come back from the mother's place, they're investigated and questioned, interviewed. They have to tell all the things that happened there at the mother's place. So within 10-15 minutes, the father will have a general overview of everything that happened at the ex's place. And then they'll call the ex-partner and have all the information and question her. Then when the child goes to the mother's place, the child doesn't tell her anything. So the children are often loyal to the abusers and won't give any information about the father. Even just neutral things aren't shared. There are many strategies that are used by the abusers. It's known that in 19% of cases, the abuser uses derogating of the other parent, belittling, and he also makes the children spy in the mother's house. They have to share everything that happened, even share secrets about relationships. And he also gives the children information about relationships that isn't suitable for their age. The abuser often criticizes the other parent and criticizes also new other family members. Also, often the abuser says that you cannot call the mother's place home, but your only home is here at me, at my place. Here we are. A child who dares to tell the abuser that, oh, we did something fun at the mother's place, then this shouldn't be done. The father will often get offended by it, and it will have consequences. Another consequence that was felt at the social level as well is that this father encourages the child to act badly with the other parent. It's often also that it's encouraged to act badly towards the whole female gender, and it's often that these children will have learning difficulties and coping difficulties at school. And often it's that if the child gets therapy, then the child tells me, "Mother, let's go away," or leaves the session at the beginning and sometimes even
talle on antud see luba käituda halvasti. Ja kui te kujutate ette, et see laps on koolis, siis õpetajad väga palju probleeme.
And it's often that there are lots of problems with its children at school.
Inimene hakkab hästi ruttu spetsialistidele rääkima ka seda, et tema ekspartner on
It's often that the abuser starts to tell protection workers that the ex-partner is crazy or is dangerous. And then I start to ask, all right, but how? In which way is she mad? In which way is the house unsafe? So I ask for details. And the abuser also starts to convince the children about on safety of the mother's place. Another example. The couple, the family split up, and the father took the 3-year-old child to the other part of Estonia. The mother started to get the child back. Once the mother got the child back, they came to therapy, and then once the child climbed the mother's lap and was asking the mother that, is your head aching? And the child also knocked against the mother's head. But the child was thinking that the mother must be having a headache because she's always drunk, because the father had told him that. The father is telling the child the mother is an alcoholic, you're unsafe with her, so on. And previously the child was doing very well at the kindergarten. Now her development started to regress, and the child had started to have delay in speech and behavior. Now, at extreme cases, this can result in the abuser limiting the child's communication with the ex-partner, and some obsessive abusers even alienate the child from the other parent. It's often that if they separate, then the abuser tells the other partner that I'll send you to a mental hospital or something worse. And this is no joke. In some cases, the woman has been suicidal, has repeatedly tried to kill herself, and has also been on therapy, on rehabilitation, and many proceedings have been started towards her. Because this is all possible. She's still alive, but it hasn't been easy for her. And the father also managed to alienate all the children from the mother.
I know that this term alienation is not used a lot in Estonia. It's used in the criminal justice system. But that's basically psychological abuse, a form of domestic violence that occurs in the case of breakups with a very high level of conflict. So when there's been domestic violence in the family, you can kind of predict that all the things that I have been describing will follow. All these tactics and strategies that I have described, well, it has been found that they are similar to these manipulations that have been used by cult leaders. So the idea is to undermine the critical thinking ability of the child and to brainwash them. Oftentimes these children come up with sentences that, keep repeating, and they might use this one sentence for years to come. So we ask them, what did your mom do? Why don't you want to talk to her? Well, I remember once I was feeling down and she didn't comfort me. So this is this accusation that the child has. Or as with the previous example, the child might say, but mommy will kidnap us. So the children might not have had contact with the mother for 2 years, but they have this obsession. So, and when you keep on asking from the child, is there something good about mommy? Or then they can't remember anything good. There's never been anything good. Why am I saying this? Well, I am dedicated to protecting children, and I want to protect children's mental health. And this kind of behavior has a very strong effect on a child, both on their daily life and in the long-term perspective. When you manipulate the child like this, they will once start to fear the parent, but then they will also become aggressive. They will start bossing around. You can't set any boundaries to them. So once there was this mother who said that the child didn't want to go to school after the breakup. The doctor said the child is fine, she can go to school. And then she went to school, and then she called her father and told her, but I'm feeling bad, I want to go home. The father told her, but you can go home. And then she went home, and when the mom came home later on, she found the child playing video games, and then the child ended up threatening the mother with a knife. So this kind of manipulation turns a normally behaving child into an aggressive child who can be aggressive, manipulative, impolite. They might start stealing. They start lying about the parents. So a child is very loyal to their parent, even if the parent has mistreated him or her. Another consequence of an alienating behavior is that the child is not loyal to the parent anymore. They might start lying about their other parent because they have been kind of made to do that. Also, there is a compromised development. Children might regress. There might be developmental delays. They might be disrespectful, condescending. They might be split inside. And this is actually a very serious thing because they have to alienate one parent. So they kind of have to desert one half of themselves. So this ends up in internal conflict, guilt, depression, suicidal thoughts. Depression is very common with teenagers like that. Teenagers who just go to school, they are able to hide what's going on inside them for a very long time, but research has shown that this ends up with self-loathing, low self-esteem, alcohol and drug abuse, lack of trust, because I mean, who can you trust in your family when, you know, it turns out that your father has been poisoning you with these thoughts for years? They might also alienate themselves from their children, or they might alienate their children from the other parent. There's a higher rate of divorce as well. So I dare say that turning a child against their parent means turning the child against themselves. We need to be very sensitive here. The idea is to make the parents suffer, to punish them. And this is a serious trauma for the parent as well. There have been suicide attempts. It's not a myth, this is reality. They feel shame, they feel powerlessness. For example, a mother who lost her daughter told me that, you know, I feel that my daughter is dead, but I can't hold a funeral because there's no body. I have no grave where I could take flowers to. So she's actually alive, but she's dead for me because I have lost her. And this is an adverse trauma. The people who don't know don't understand what this could feel like for a parent. And this is why I would like to question whether a father like this is a good father. In Estonia, I often receive letters from abusers asking me why I don't let them meet their children, and they always quote the law telling me that children or parents have the right and the responsibility to communicate with the child, but they forget to mention that they also have to guarantee that the child would be safe. So I would like you to think about the role of a child, of a father in the life of a child. What kind of father do we value? Does this contact or is this contact with the child more important than the potential harm that they could do to the child? Okay, I can see that we don't have a lot of time left. I did some research on the topic, and when we speak about the communication procedure, then violence is not taken into account. So the contact between the father and the child is sacred, and what's going on between them, that doesn't matter. I have a horrible example to give. So there were all sorts of violence in the family. The mother left, and the father wanted to meet his son, who went to the elementary school. He had also been violent towards the child, and I advised the child protection worker that, you know, they can only meet when you are present at the meeting. So the child protection specialist was sitting nearby, and the father and the son were playing football. And what did they do? The father whispered to the child, "I will make your mother pay. She will pay me 500 euros every day, and she won't have a lawyer soon enough." Okay, so the children aren't safe, even if they have a person sitting next to them who should guarantee their safety. So this child had a serious mental collapse after meeting his father. Historically, it has been thought that it's the mothers alienating the father, but when we speak about domestic violence, then unfortunately, you know, it's mostly the fathers who are alienating the child from their mother. So my advice is to change the paradigm when we speak about domestic violence. So we should have limited or supervised meetings, or a complete ban to contact the child, to guarantee the safety of the child and the other parent. So I think this is the problem of the whole society, but we need to protect our children from this kind of violence, and we need to take it seriously. Thank you. Thank you, Kaire. We have many questions here, so let's start from my own story. I have 5-year-old twins at home, 2 girls. So I would like to prevent problems. What should I tell my 5-year-old girls so that they wouldn't end up in a relationship like that? My advice is to teach your children what does it mean to say no and to accept no. If a parent says, "Please don't do it," of course a small child doesn't listen. But when they grow up, we teach them that it's important to accept no. And we also have to accept when our children say no. I think this is the basic tool that we can give our children, so that when in the future they are being abused, then usually the abuser is very nice, but then they do something and they say no, usually they don't accept your no. And this is a signal to you that, you know, this is not going to be a good relationship. So this is my advice, to respect your own limits, to know your limits. And when somebody crosses your limits, then you leave. Okay, but how to leave a violent relationship, to leave the children unharmed? What kind of solutions have worked? Before breaking up, you should consult a specialist, you should act fast, you should be exact, and then the result is good. And please have specialists that know that's going on. And I have also written my expert assessments to courts, and then they have set the limits, and after the abuser can't use the child as a weapon anymore, there's no point in continuing. So we have to set the limits, set the boundaries. Then we have a hope for a good outcome. The next question, how could we help the abusers? Can you believe that they can change? Do you have success stories in your practice? There is one, yes. But this was a special case. I mean, this person was very motivated. This is the only way when the abuser understands himself that, you know, this isn't working, I want to have a different relationship. And they need to be willing to work with themselves. And you have to work with your shame. And many people don't want to undertake this. But there was one man who did it, and I was happy with the result. But I think that there are many people who have serious psychological issues that haven't been diagnosed. So I wouldn't really, count on that.
on laps vägivaldsele vanemale lojaalne?
Why is a child loyal to a violent parent? Well, first of all, they're afraid. They are afraid of the reaction of the parent. Often children act better with a violent parent. They mind their every step. They are constantly scanning the reactions of the parent. And, actually, it should be the other way around. The parent should be monitoring the child. With a violent parent, it's the other way around. The children are afraid. They are afraid of the consequences, the dominating side of the abuser. Also, usually the abuser has more resources than the victim, and we all need resources for life, and this is a practical issue. There were many questions being asked, so if you want to ask something from Kaire, please go and have lunch with her, speak about her presentations. Also, the ones following us online, I'm sure that they can contact you. There are your contact details, so you can contact her. So Kaire, thank you for your presentation.